Hey everybody! This is Death by D4, and this is the story of when I ditched my party to date a Tiefling in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. There's a lot to go over, so be sure to subscribe and let's dive right on in. So this story comes from a campaign that I was lucky enough to play in. I say lucky because I've basically been a forever DM my entire D&D life. I was playing as this handsome half-elf warlock named Davrian Lucerin, and I was the only spellcaster at a party of 3 rogues and 2 fighters. Seriously, it was a bit silly that way. Anyway, we had just returned from some grand adventure outside the main city that we had been living in for most of the campaign. Upon arriving, we learned that, starting tomorrow, the city was about to begin some week-long festival of sorts, where lots of trade and celebration was about to be had. We weren't entirely sure of what to make of it, but everybody came up with their own ideas of what they wanted to do for the festival. So excited for the following day, we just rested up and then got down to business the following morning. So one of our fighters went off to work in a food stall, where he proceeded to make some very terrible rolls and then just make almost no money for himself. And one of our rogues then joined a card tournament, where he did marginally better and earned some winnings for us. The rest of the group then decided to wander the festival and simply take in all the sights and sounds they had to offer. As for me, I headed over to the local guild house. You see, I wanted to collect a bounty for the last quest that we had just completed and pick up another job for us to do later. After that, I was planning on just reconvening with the others in the festival plaza. That said, that's not at all what actually ended up happening. You see, when I arrived at the guild hall, I found that it was essentially abandoned, at least in terms of the actual people that were being there. In fact, when I went inside, I found that there was only one clerk working there, a young tiefling woman named Coco. Now, of course, I had met her before. In fact, I'd come across her multiple times when visiting the guild house for the party. On one occasion, I actually caught her reading some trashy romance novel instead of doing her job, so I ended up tossing her a couple of gold pieces and told her to go find something of better taste. Honestly, I didn't really know if she liked me all that much, but she didn't dislike me enough to throw me out. So all was good with our banter, I guess. Anyway, when I approached her, I asked her where everybody had gone, and she told me that they were all at the festival. When I asked her why she was still there, she then told me that she got stuck running the guild counter, so while everybody else got to go have fun or work in the festival, she had to stay there alone and keep the doors open. Now, obviously, I didn't think this was very fair for her. It's not like I really had any real plans for myself for the rest of the day. So after collecting the party's bounty and taking another job listing, I attempted to persuade Coco into leaving her post and joining me for a bit at the festival. My DM had me roll for persuasion, and I didn't really roll high enough. At that point, I was actually kind of ticked off, because I didn't actually roll all that badly to begin with. After all, not only did I have maximized charisma, but I actually had expertise in persuasion as well, so the fact that I still failed that check really bothered me. So at that point, I had Davrian pull out his gilded ink pen, which was in fact his arcane focus in disguise, and then I proceeded to debate casting Suggestion on Coco. Honestly, it would have made convincing her a lot easier, and I had definitely irresponsibly used Suggestion a number of times with NPCs during this campaign. Heck, I'd used this trick on the city's mayor to get a lot of extra money for the party once. But when it came to doing this to Coco, I suddenly started to have a bit of a consciousness form for Davrian. So, after twirling my ink pen for a few moments, I gave Coco a charming smile and simply asked her for a spare sheet of paper. She gave me one, and then I wrote on the paper, "Sorry, closed for the festival, come back again later." And then I walked up to the front door and slapped it onto the window. Then I just walked back up to her, offered her my hand, and said, "I would be no man to leave a woman here in such misery. Now come along, you'll be glad that you did." At that point, my DM didn't even make me roll this time. Coco just smiled shyly back to me, took my hand, and we were off. Now, in the intermission of this happening, the rest of the party had gotten themselves involved with the city guard and aiding them with the patrols around the festival. And then as they took a turn down one of the city's less busy streets, they came across a robbery with a number of bandits. So at that point, not only was I separated from the party, but they had gotten themselves into combat without me and 2 other members. And the bandits that they ended up fighting were like no joke. Not only was there a whole lot of them, but some of them were like really strong. That said, before they got too involved into rolling for initiative and such, we had a quick cut back to me and Coco, where we had just begun perusing the festival market. While we were doing so, I made a quick insight check to try and discern if Coco was looking at anything in particular, and I was able to discern her interest in a necklace adorning a large garnet. After bartering down the price a bit, I bought it with her and hung it around her neck. I mean, at first she refused the gift, but I told her since this had all been my idea that it would have all been for nothing if I couldn't spoil her a bit. Besides, I had all of the party's earnings from the last bounty, so who was to say that I couldn't just spend it? This was very much in character for Davrian, as he very much liked to spend money on other people to make him like him. Did the rest of my party appreciate that? It wasn't that expensive, don't worry about it. After that, we walked around the streets until we got to the festival plaza. There, Coco challenged me to a ball-tossing game, where I then telepathically asked my familiar to turn invisible and then help me knock over the bottles that I was aiming for. After winning the game as we were walking away, I then got a sneaky idea to ask my familiar to trip Coco on the count of 3. On 3, she then stumbled and I made a quick skill check to then catch her in my arms. "Hey, watch your step now," I said to her. "Might not be here to catch you next time." Despite how hilariously cheesy this stunt was, Coco had taken it well and she appeared to be really enjoying herself at the festival anyway. In all honesty, so was I. So meanwhile, back with wherever the party was, they were like half dead to these bandits now, and my DM was having to adapt the situation a bit on the fly in order to keep them alive. Honestly, I don't really entirely know what happened with their combat in the end, because it ended up taking like over an hour, and in all honesty, I kind of stopped paying attention to it after a little while. I mean, I feel even worse for our fighter's cook, because he ended up basically getting nothing to do that entire session, which was kind of a shame. Anyway, back with Coco and I, we wandered up to the festival center where there was a large dance being held. Coco immediately turned to leave, and I caught her arm and told her that there was no way I was letting her leave without giving me the chance to dance with her. Another quick persuasion check later, and she was wrapped up in my arms, trying desperately not to look like a fool in front of everybody with me. That said, unfortunately, I didn't roll so hot for my performance check either, so we both kinda just looked like idiots out there. Thankfully, we didn't trip over each other's feet too badly, and when it was all done and dealt with, she told me that it was high time that she had to return to the guild house before anybody else noticed that she'd been gone. I didn't really want to get her in trouble, so yeah, I took her back then. Upon arriving, she unlocked the front door before turning around to thank me for treating her to such a wonderful afternoon. I told her that it had been my pleasure and that I was open to seeing her again like that in the future. I went to then say goodbye to her, but then I was surprised when she suddenly leaned in and kissed me on the cheek. She then disappeared swiftly inside the guild house, just leaving me standing there out in the middle of the streets just looking a bit dumbfounded. So if you're curious to know if she actually became my love interest or not, well, I'll just leave it up to your imagination for now. And that's it! That was my D&D story of when I ditched my party to date a tiefling. Did you enjoy it, and would you be interested in hearing more stories like this in the future? Let me know down in the comments below. If you'd like to support the channel, be sure to give this video a like and consider supporting me over on Patreon. Patreon supporters gain access to my patron-only server over on Discord, where you can join in on my games, and chat with me and other patrons about everything D&D related. Be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon if you haven't, and if you're interested in seeing more videos of mine, here's one right up over here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see all of you in the next video.